My name is Ernst Wolvetang. I'm a professor in stem cell biology at the Australian Institute for Bioengineering and Nanotechnology at the University of Queensland up here in Brisbane in Australia. I'm originally from the Netherlands. I came to Australia about 30 years ago and I started to work on what's called human embryonic stem cells, which are stem cells that can make all the cell types of the human body. I started to grow those, learn how to grow those, learn what they can turn into. And then a key changing point was when we were able to not get those stem cells from embryos, but to reprogram them from cells, from blood cells from patients. And at that moment in time, I turned my entire research to using those stem cells to understand disease and to find treatments for human diseases. What has really changed the game again is our ability to now turn those stem cells into more complex tissue avatars called organoids, and those organoids have both the cellular makeup as well as the function of the organ in question. And we've been progressively focusing on the brain because that is a tissue that people don't like to have biopsies taken from. So we are creating brain organoids and spinal cord organoids to start to understand how the brain functions, how it malfunctions when there are genetic mutations, and how they are impacted by external impacts such as viruses or lack of oxygen during birth. And then, again, to find treatments that can help people have a better life. I'd like to separate our research in two main areas. One is to understand and treat genetic diseases. These are diseases that often affect the development of the brain in children, which either makes them desperately sick or even makes them succumb to the disease very early. Those are often very rare diseases that pharmaceutical companies are not interested in, and we are catering for those types of diseases because we can make organoids and do clinical trials in a dish, which you can't do with those rare diseases. And the other area is how viruses and external impacts and aging affect the brain, and to see if we can improve the health of our brain in the face of those challenges. On the genetic side, we're looking at lysosomal storage diseases, inborn errors of metabolism, epilepsy, ataxia, telangiectasia, and white matter diseases in children, and on the environmental impact on Zika virus, COVID, Japanese encephalitis, neurotropic viruses that affect the brain, and on hypoxia-induced encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain that leads to cerebral palsy in kids once they have a lack of oxygen, either just before or after birth. So what we're trying to do is to find a treatment for what's called drug-resistant epilepsy. About 1/3 of patients that have epilepsy will not find anti-seizure medications that are effective for them. So what we've done is we've established brain organoids from stem cells that we created from these drug-resistant patients. And instead of, and then we're starting to screen drugs and see whether they are effective in managing the seizures that we can see in these brain organoids. And we're now testing whether those organoid-based predictions are effective in the clinic in managing the seizures of these patients. That is just starting to happen now. And once we are having a good idea how good our predictions are, we're hoping to roll this out to our healthcare providers and improve the drug selection for patients that at the moment cannot control their seizures. The main passion is to cure diseases. That's what I've been doing my whole life, and having these personalized models. These are personalized models of the patients themselves. Makes that direct connection with the patients, especially for these rare diseases. We know these patients and we know the families and we know how desperately they are looking for a cure. And that connection between fundamental research and the developing treatments for those desperately sick kids, that is what makes me get out of bed every morning, and that will continue to drive our research over the next decade. Outside of the laboratory, I like to go hiking and get away from it all, and I like to play tennis, and because that is that is the game of the gods as far as I'm concerned. I also love to spend some time with my family, of course, and go traveling whenever I can.